Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live stream, and I will begin the event by asking Laverne First Writer to start us off in a good way with a prayer.
Sorry, Laverne, I believe your mic is on mute.
Ayo napi natu si stipata pio. Ayo noksikimma tukinna nokpikim naka noksistikoi nokkutakoi skaktakumanistai kimakpinnan. O kiani makokkanasuka piwaka monitkanuh pinnani. Ayo nokpikimma tukinnanak nitsaskoi minnan. Mata sapu tuanana amskapi pikani saksi morli siksikawa keniks nitpukitsitapi mannan. O kinokitutsins katumuau tapi snan niksiapa muhtsiksha. Takkanasa katu pinamuksat saat sakayuhtukuksins. O kinokpikimma tukinnanak nuku sinnaniksi. Nissuku sinnaniksi. O kinokpikimma tukinnanu tapi sna. Ayo kyohkans katsimatpinnanak nokpikimmukinnanak annikanasuka pichitapuauh kahpinnan. Kimma tukinnanaka nokpikimmukinnanaka nikanasukapi anninapi sin kamutaan sami päätäpi sin stuatsimaan.
Hi, Ishnish. Thank you very much, Elder Laverne, for the prayer to start us off in a good way. And I just want to also begin with the territorial acknowledgement. So we respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather, most of us here are in Treaty Number 6 territory, is the traditional gathering place and continues to be the gathering place for many Indigenous peoples. We honor and respect the history, the language, the ceremonies, and the culture of the First Nations Métis and Inuit who call this territory home. The First Peoples connection to the land teaches us about our inherent responsibility to protect and respect Mother Earth. With this land acknowledgement, we honor the ancestors and the children who have been buried here, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and men, and ongoing collective healing for all human beings. We are reminded that we are all treaty people and that the responsibility we have is to one another. And it's very important for me as well to do that because Rob Houle Nasika soon, Wapsusipi Tando Chania. My name is Rob Houle, and I come from Swan River First Nation, which is up in Treaty Number 8 territory. So I am not from Treaty Number 6, and I've been honored to be living here for close to 20 years now, living, working in the city of Edmonton and Treaty Number 6 territory. I became involved in this Indigenous naming initiative very early on, and Indigenous naming is a passion of mine. And I am joined today by my co-chair and another circle keeper, Terri.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Laverne, as well for starting us with a prayer. That's always very important. Wapigihilo squad and sigason on its kaponeko. I'm just really honored to be here today. I'm really honored that and thankful that we have Lillian, Laverne, and Theresa joining us to discuss this process, and also for those who are joining us to have the opportunity to watch the documentary, the full documentary, which hasn't been shown before. I'm from Stale Cree Nation in 360. And I've been working with McEwen University as the Director of Indigenous Initiatives for the past 4 years. And part of my role with this committee was a circle keeper. And so I'm going to start by actually, because we want to get into the documentary, I'm going to start by introducing first Elder Theresa Strawberry. Theresa Strawberry is an elder advisor from the Ochees First Nation in Treaty 6 territory. She provides cultural awareness, education to the public. She shares her personal and professional experience to send a strong message of empowerment. Time to let go and embrace on the true power of reconciliation. Providing an overall connection to communities with cultural education, her vision is to be the model of connectivity used for all communities to break down barriers, to come together, to understand each other in First Nations cities, provinces, countries, and the world. To join, to heal, honor, to celebrate the birth of a new spirit coming to life. She is a very powerful speaker with a wealth of knowledge, speaker to conferences. Elder Strawberry was honored with a Cultural Award at the 2015 ISKWEWak Awards. Currently, Theresa plays a key role as an elder liaison both at the Edmonton Institution for Women and the Elk Island Catholic School Division. She is a member of the Elder Advisory Board for Education. Her work with the Truth and Reconciliation Initiative is very meaningful as she draws a very special connection with many. The past, the present, and future can be measured in the strength of our resilience to move forward.
Yes, and thank you for that, Terry. And I echo the sentiments that tonight's a very special night, and I'm looking forward to viewing the full documentary as well, as I'm sure lots of people are, and it's going to be a fantastic evening of conversation. And I'm also going to introduce Elder Laverne First Rider, who started us off in a good way with a prayer, and she is employed with the Kainai Board of Education on the Blood Reserve, and is a Blackfoot language and cultural instructor. Laverne received a BA from the University of Lethbridge in language and literacy certificate from the University of Alberta, and is currently doing a master's program with the University of Calgary. And as mentioned, Laverne is an elder in the Blackfoot Nation, and although they currently reside in Treaty Number 7 territory, they do have a deep and rich connection to Treaty Number 6 territory in the Edmonton area. So we're happy that she was able to join us tonight. And I'm also going to introduce, before we get into the documentary screening, Elder Lillian Gadwa-Cryer. Her spirit name is Rainbow Dancer. She is an advocate of grandmother's teaching. She firmly believes and follows the Cree way of life and life teachings. She is grateful for this life today and every day because we have been given Kinihiawan to follow, and that is the Cree way of life. She has been an Indigenous educator for over 30 years. She is a strong advocate of Indigenous education. She believes that and has listened to the Kitayak, teach what you know, show what you know, and follow what you know. And of course, Kitayak is the elders and the old ones before us. And she is very proud to be a Nihiao Iskwewak, and will continue to promote the Cree ways and all of the work that she does. So with that, we are happy that everyone could join us tonight, and I think now is time to go into the documentary screening.
There has been an absence of Indigenous voice for centuries.
We are the first peoples of this land, and it's important that, we are visible.
Here's an opportunity to honor Indigenous languages and culture and history and continued presence on these lands.
Anything worth doing is going to be hard. Learning new languages is going to be hard.
It's an invitation, I guess you could say, to get to know who we are.
We're really taking a plunge, right? We're really taking this as really being innovative and really being of our truth. So I thought, whoa, is the world ready for this, right?
I'd say it's the first time that we've done something like this. The naming committee was so excited to be a part of this project.
We were talking about the ward boundary changes, and we were in a bit of a pickle because it was going to be very confusing to keep using the ward name numbers the way that we had.
To name our electoral divisions in ways that reflect the history of not just Edmonton or Misquechiwaskahigan, but the north, the south, the different Indigenous communities who've journeyed here, traded here, made peace here, signed a treaty here, including the Métis and the Inuit, is a very significant gesture of reconciliation. I was very proud that Council had the vision to embrace this gift that's been given to us by our Indigenous community.
At our very first meeting, we discussed strategy. What was going to be our strategy in how are we going to select the names? What is this going to look like? But it was important that we look at our traditional teachings and guidance from elders within our communities. So I asked, is it possible to have an all-women's committee and to do it in such a way that we can bring together female, Indigenous, knowledge keepers, elders, educators, scholars, community folks, just to ensure that we had that inclusive voice. And again, not being also inclusive to Indigenous the Indigenous cultures within Alberta as well, and the connections to Edmonton.
It's like your grandma or niga, sometimes you just got to get out of their way and let them do their work, right? And they get it done.
We are all women around this table. We've been trusted, given the faith that we can do this important and meaningful work, that we have the ability, and we are thankful for that trust and faith. Because in the beginning, when I was asked and shown the timeline and all the work, the terms of reference, I thought, my God, this is an impossible task within such a short period of time.
You don't always have to have the loudest voice or the loudest male voice in the room kind of pushing things. It can be, we can default to our women, and our women can take care of the process a lot faster than probably men could, because when you have men sitting around the table, ego gets in the way.
So we are going to get on the bus around 3 o'clock, and there's 4 sites that we are going to be visiting today. Again, we don't have the capacity to visit all 12 areas today, just given the time. We will come back. Everybody is invited to join us for supper.
It was amazing. It was amazing how that in itself kind of transformed everything. And I think even just the gathering that weekend of all of us coming together and building relationships, and we did the tour of the city and looking at 4 different sites and really engaging with one another, not just about the work that we were doing, but at a personal level. And that's important when we think about this work that we do, is that how are we building on our relationships with one another? How can I trust you? How can I know and understand where you're coming from?
I was in Charles Camsell Hospital in 1952. I grew up, I was in the same ward as Inuit children. And my dad used to speak Denisuchline with me, so I knew Denisuchline. And then my playmates were all Inuit, so I learned to speak Inuit.
A lot of the people from our area were made up a good majority of the TB patients at the Charles Camsell. And so it's like to honor them. We stayed in the Charles Camsell Hospital as well, and he stayed there so long. And he made lots of Cree friends. He came out of Charles Camsell Hospital speaking Cree, beside his own Inuvialuktun language.
I think in our deliberations, this is one of the only places that we're visiting today that has ties to the Inuit. And so as we're thinking about names, this might be one of the locations that we want to designate using the Inuit language.
It was almost instantly, you know, before I went consulting with other Inuit elders and people that I know in my language work circle. But I thought of anangnak because anangnak simply means breath, but it's also spirit. So spirit of breath, spirit, they seem to go hand in hand. And it was very fitting for the type of patients that Charles Camsell housed.
On my mom's side, I'm a Bruno, and we were also like Papasteo descendants or part of that band. And so I have a handful of ancestors that are buried down in Rossdale Flats. So that's a significant place for me in the city, and it was important. And I also live in the ward that is now, will hopefully be Odaimin. So it was important for me that we pay tribute to them in some way with the name too. And Odaimin is an Anishinaabe word for strawberry. And so I'm not Anishinaabe, I have Anishinaabeg ancestry, but in my understanding through Cree language, it means heartberry. And so Ode is the word that means heart.
It represents the gathering place at the very heart of the city where our city hall and our civic institutions are. And it's been nice to see Councillor McKean pick that up with a twinkle in his eye to be able to tell that story, because it's so much more significant than Ward 6, right? And it's even more meaningful, I think, than downtown.
What are the given? Like what is something that we cannot necessarily, it's the names that are gonna stay within these recommendations. And we knew that it was honoring our LGBTQ2+ community, and as well as honoring the Papas Chase Band.
Papasteo, who was the chief of the Papas Chase First Nation, which, you know, there's been a lot of conversation about Frank Oliver. We've learned his name, and he was involved in some dubious practices that dispossessed the band and its people of their lands. And so it's important for us to learn the name of the chief who was representing people who were wronged historically, as a way of honoring the Papas Chase Band and its people and its history.
Terwilliger Park, which is Biesewin, the land of the Thunderbirds, because the Thunderbird for us represents water, right? And we as women, we are keepers of that water, because without our mothers, we wouldn't be here, because the first time that we're born through our mothers, it was that water broke, right? In our prophecies, we are told that when our women return back to the land to break water, give birth on the land, only then will the buffalo return, is what we're reminded in our prophecies.
What they had found was actually that there were quite a few mounds of broken rocks. And although the archaeologists didn't understand what that was, we know that that's actually, for us, we know that those are part of a sweat lodge.
Creator created these sacred sites for his workers, placed his workers to help us. And the Terwilliger Park is where the Thunderbird was placed on the south side, because it's our belief that door our ancestors come in from. That's that portal, they come in through the south side, right? And if you take an aerial view, it's shaped like a Thunderbird. Biesewin is what we said. Ogimau Biesu at first, right? Like the chief of the winged beings. Oh no, grandchild, that's not quite it. Oh, okay, all right, okay. Biesu, yeah, you're close. And then one grandfather helped us and said, Biesewin osim Biesewin, yeah. So that's what they said. Creator had named it.
We forget the importance of, and Roxanne Tootoosis taught me this very earlier on, was ensure that you're always giving thanks and make sure that you're always offering protocol for these projects and everything that you do, because they guide you, and they guide you in a really good way.
way hey ya ya hey.
So ceremony is, I find, we are trying to build this resurgence within our communities. Ceremony is healing. You know, at the root of everything, ceremony is what brings us all together, and it ensures that we do things in the appropriate way.
It's very ambitious to want to name anything, let alone 12 different Indigenous names. When I had spoken at City Council, I had the full intention of encouraging them to take on some Indigenous names. I wasn't sure at the very beginning. I was very skeptical whether or not we could do all 12. But thankfully, through ceremony and things like that, we were given the path forward and the guidance to achieve that task.
So there was a lot to consider, especially with the pronunciation of the names and how these names have meaning, because there is spirit within the language.
This relates to the project about ward boundary names because it is the women who came forward. It's the women who led and guided and directed this, and it's the women who gathered the wisdom and the knowledge and connected communities in order to gift these names to the people of the city of Edmonton.
The ceremony that's behind the package of names coming to us as a bundle is sacred and does come from that knowledge and come from the ceremony and the protocol, which is informed by traditions that run back hundreds or thousands of years here on these lands, and that's not to be trifled with.
When you can do projects like this that are Indigenous-led, they get it done, and it's done in the most meaningful way. And I think that, you know, other cities or towns, well, I guess it would be cities, but even towns are able to incorporate languages and names within their spaces. And it's important. You know, we are the first peoples of this land, and it's important that, you know, we are visible.
And so when we include Indigenous history, Indigenous languages, and Indigenous peoples into our stories, not as something from the past, but as something alive today, then we get to really find out who we are. And that is a welcoming and a loving people.
Way ya hey, way ya hey ya hey ya ya hey.
Well, that was really brought up a lot of memories for me in regards to last summer and the process. And I want to just share with some of our listeners a little bit about the process prior. And one of the things was that we had there was a number of community folks who were advocating for the ward names to be named Indigenous names. Myself and Dr. Christopher Wells from MacEwan University wrote a joint open letter to City Council back in June. And we were advocating for this, and we were invited to City Council to speak. And when we were there, we had a number of, Lillian was there joining us as well. Elder Dr. Francis Whiskey Jack was with me that day. And we had other community folks, Rob was there, and we all had opportunities to speak about the importance of why this was important. And I always go back to, again, that symbolism. The symbolism that is really important for Indigenous people in the city. But it's really a great opportunity to utilize in education. You know, we work in education. It creates opportunities to educate our young people within the school system about the history of Indigenous people, specifically within the city. And so it was really important And we see that now. We see, now that the names are official, we have, gotten responses that there is teachers out there who are creating amazing, really cool assignments with the Indigenous ward names. And there's so much meaning. There's so much meaning to each name. And so I just want to remind those of you who are tuning in is that you can ask questions. And so if there is questions that you have in regards to the process, to any of our elders who are joining us today, our panelists, feel free to add those in. We encourage that. We will be, again, asking questions to them. Is there anything else that you would like to add, Rob?
Thanks, Terri. Yeah. Every time I watch that documentary, it brings back a lot of great memories. It's hard to believe it's been just about a year now since we started the work on and started the discussion on renaming and the renaming opportunities that exist in Edmonton. And again, I'm honored to have been part of the process and to have been able to sit in these meetings and learn from all these fantastic women around the table, and to just kind of sit back and take it all in. And I always chuckle at my part in the clip where I talk about ego getting in the way, because I've done a lot of work in Indigenous politics and things like that, and worked with a lot of chiefs and leaders, and that I think this initiative proves that that's very much true, and that once you take certain kind of personalities back away from the table, things can move very quickly and can have very rewarding outcomes. And just to reiterate, please send your questions into tansa@gwincommunications.com. And we look forward to a great conversation about the documentary. But I think it's a great opportunity now just to hear from our panelists on what they think about the documentary and how they view it and what their first reactions are to seeing the completed piece. So Lillian, do you have any thoughts or comments on the documentary?
Yes. First of all, I want to say, mamutawi masemanto na naskumak. Egominaya Laverne kaka kisamont. Thank you for those wonderful blessings for everyone, not just for us sitting here, but for everybody, out there. And also the outcome. Man, it was so good. I just smiled right through, and listening to the different women that were a part of that group. They brought so much wealth of information and knowledge to the circle. I just absolutely love it. And it just, it just bang on covers everything that we did. The field trip that we had. I mean, we're adults and we went on a field trip, which was great. We even had our bag lunches with us. And that's what was perfect. We were given that opportunity to explore and to get out there and speak to the land, because this is the land that we're acknowledging. And a lot of people do not have that concept or love for that land. We forget to acknowledge. And that's what we're doing in this process, is we're acknowledging that land, because the land was here before us. It owns us. We don't own it. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Lillian. Elder Laverne, did you have any thoughts or comments on the documentary or the process? I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a few comments here, listening to, is it Lillian that just spoke? And I didn't have very much to do with the circle keeping. I believe that's what you guys called it. And I was invited the one time, And so, but I didn't, you know, I thought it was a very good idea that these names were being changed, and so those are. I hope everything goes well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Laverne. And Theresa, did you have any comments or question or comments on the process or the documentary screening? Initial thoughts?
First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody that's on this live stream. It's been a real honor for me to be a part of this process, and I think for me it was really empowering one another as life givers to have a voice and to be a part of this process of truth and reconciliation and acknowledging our past ancestors to be able to rename these different areas and the total meaning of that and the connection that we had for one another along with the land around us, Mother Earth, you know. So it was quite a loving experience for me because of the amount of knowledge that these women have, and along with the people that work with us, the young people, how resilient they were to bring things together. I think what really stands out for me is that, you know, doing those 7 sacred teachings and working with the circle, and those 7 sacred teachings are the love, the respect, the courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and truth, and connecting with all of that just brought the circle into a full circle. And I think the most important thing for me also is that we are actually connecting with all the different nations, and along with that to be even more open to the different cultures that played a role in wanting to connect with one another. 3 very important things that come to mind for me was that you know, the love, the unity, and the hope that a better future for our children to learn from this, but to be proud of who they are, to be proud of and respect wherever they're at, because this was a gathering place for all of our nations to come together and to celebrate, to do ceremony. And so that to me was very important, and creating a legacy for our future children, grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Hi, thank you.
Hi, Ishnish, Elder Theresa. So we do have questions coming in, but I think it's good to also just talk about where the ward names came from. Great opportunity to expand on some of them, maybe. So, and I think it was a great opportunity to have different voices come to this panel. Wouldn't you say, Terri?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that, you know, one of the things, and actually I have the questions up. We do have quite a few questions coming in. And so I'm just going to go in. The first question actually will speak to some of that. And I'm going to answer that question. And the question was, with regards to the new ward names in Edmonton, why was the committee made up of entirely women? You know, one of the things, I had never done this before. I'm just gonna just to be honest with all of you, you know, this is not something. It was definitely a first go for me. I have experience, again, chairing committees. I chaired the Indigenous Advisory Council at MacEwan University, but this was different, and I knew, you know, in my work and the work that I do, oftentimes I am sitting with my mentors and with elders and knowledge keepers to seek guidance and how to move forward in things. And that's the way that I was brought up. And so this was no different. And I went into ceremony, and I went in to speak with different elders to speak about how do we do this and what does it look like. And I had this thought that what would it look like if we brought all Indigenous women, elders, scholars together to do this process. We knew we were on a time crunch. We knew we had 2 months. You know, we were told that it was impossible, that we couldn't get it done. And I remember looking at an elder saying, is it possible? And him saying to me, yes, like this is possible if you do it right. And that means starting in ceremony. And so I talked to Dr. Leona Makokis, and I called her. She's a mentor of mine, and I've known her forever. And we were talking about this, bringing in what was the traditional roles of women, Indigenous women within our communities. And she shared some teachings with me that day. And really it was that traditionally as Indigenous women, we are in the center of our communities because we are closest to our elders and our children. And so because of that, we know the needs within our communities. We have those very close ties and those relationships. Traditionally, we were the decision makers. And so we would come in within our communities, we were the decision makers, and then we would hand those over to our men to speak on our behalf. And so when she was sharing these stories, and again, teachings are different within each of our nations. And I just want people to be mindful of that doesn't mean that we are all, we have these same teachings. And so I took that information and I went into ceremony and I offered protocol, and insight was given to me. And so I approached the city of Edmonton and we talked about that in inviting Indigenous women to this committee. And, knowing that we didn't have time to do a call out to invite applications to this, we had to be very selective of who we were bringing to the table. And we knew the needs. We wanted folks who were Indigenous scholars, again, elders. We wanted, of course, language speakers. We wanted women who were connected to their communities, who had those good working relationships in the places that they occupy. And so there was a number of things. And we had a huge list. We had a big list. And I think that, we had to cut it down quite a bit and bring it down to under 20 women. And I think that was the first time and such a beautiful experience to see the way we all came together and worked together in such a good way to bring forward and gift these names and ceremonies in the city of Edmonton. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And the next question is, are committees run by Indigenous people different from those run by non-Indigenous people, and how are they different? So I just want to open that up to each of our panelists if there's one of you that would like to answer that question. Don't all rush to it. You're all really humble. You're all waiting for somebody to.
Hi, I'll answer it a little bit. In regards to what Terri shared today in regards to choosing the women to be a part of this working committee, I didn't realize that. But the only thing I know is that one day I received a letter of invite to be a part of this circle. And of course, I wasn't really, not knowing what their purpose was, their mission was, but the idea of going to ceremony first and foremost to get that guidance and direction, that's the difference. That's the difference. The Indigenous women or any Indigenous committee will always resort to the guidance of the elder, the knowledge keepers, and whatnot. I think that's the big difference there. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. Theresa, did you want to add to that?
Just a little bit. First of all, again, I'd like to acknowledge the women that couldn't be part of this panelist today that did a lot of wonderful work. But I think the uniqueness of the circle that worked together in regarding this project was we worked in the circle and every voice was equal to the other. So it wasn't one leading the other. And having those truth and wise, not confrontation, to be able to discipline ourselves to hear one another, the importance of their stories, and coming to the point where we said, okay, this is what sounds good, and truthfully, how everything came together in a ceremony in a circle. We've always, through our lifetime, through our ancestors and us, is that we continue working in the circle. Nobody's above anybody. We're work as equally as possible. And I think that's why it made it so unique. And also the ceremonies that we talk about, we all know that we all have great beliefs, and giving that to the creator to help us through this process. That was the unique part of it as part of the ceremony, and to be able to work together.
Thank you for that, Theresa. And I agree with that. I think that, again, as I mentioned, Indigenous governance is different. It's very different. And in large part because of ceremony and the process itself. And I know that, again, going through this, having done this for the first time, we were ensuring that we were guided in the most appropriate way. And so thank you, Lillian and Theresa. We will move on to the next question. Rob, can you see the questions?
Yeah, so I'll, Elder Laverne, can you share with us from a Blackfoot kind of paradigm and perspective, what it means to be an elder? That's one of the questions that has come in. And you're still on mute.
Well, to start off, I'm not quite an elder yet. The process with the within the Blackfoot takes many years. And at the moment, I'm still learning. I'm still being taught. Because of our age grade societies, that's where we start learning. Well, not then, but as soon as we're born, we start learning. And so going through these age grade societies, when we do finally reach the point of becoming an elder, some of my elders are younger than me, and so some of my elders were the same age, and so it's like I said, it takes many years for us to reach that space to be an elder, and so but that's how we reach eldership.
Thank you for that. And I think Terri and the others touched on it a little bit, and how diverse this group was, and how so many language families, so many nations came together, so many different teachings behind each nation, all came together to kind of work together and work in collaboration to present these names. And I think it was a lot of ceremony. It was a lot of guidance seeking, and it was also a little bit of strategy as well. And when we thought it was important to touch on certain givens that we wanted to have reflected in the name. So that's why kind of all of the language families are reflected in the names. And it was important that, like I said earlier, that language families that are outside of Treaty Number 6 territory be reflected as well, like the Blackfoot and the Haudenosaunee, which is another ward that is on the south side. So I will just go on to the next question, which is, someone had a comment that they have learned and that they live in Nakota Ishka. And then their question is, do you hope that the success of this woman-led initiative will encourage other women, especially Indigenous women, to get involved in city work or politics? So do any of you brave ladies want to tackle that one first?
Yes, I believe it is one of the things that is going to help our young women step up to the plate, minus the hardships that perhaps I encountered. One of the things that I always wanted to be was a chief. A chief. But listen, because I married out of my community, I was displaced. And I married into another community. And I'm not a welcomed member because I'm not an original member. So I did the next best thing, was to go and further my education and reach the highest level that I possibly could. We want, this woman group want to influence and encourage our young women to go far and to attain what it is that they want to. Never be pushed back and be told that you cannot do it, because that's what we went through. That's what I went through. I couldn't do it. And that was my fight. All those years I was, on my educational journey. So this women's committee is a blessing. It's a blessing to our young people. And my daughter, she knows about, what has transpired here, because she was my sounding board. And I wanted to teach her as well. I want her to step up and say, hey, I can do what my mother did. I can do what Terri did. I can do what, the other beautiful ladies did. And yes, I hope I answered that. Thank you.
Hi, just to add on to a bit of what Lillian had to say, I think one of the things is I feel very inspired that we are able to be role models for the younger generation, young women, to actually step up to the plate and to have a voice, but also to remember that, to share their stories, to share our history, and how important it is for us, how resilient we are, and how well we are connected to Mother Earth, spirituality, how well we're connected to one another, and to be able to say, we're here, we're not going to go anywhere, so let's work together, whether it's through other nations or through other religions or whatever. It's about bridging that gap and not sitting back anymore and just being aware of your own surroundings and your own power, and to be able to say and share our beautiful stories. Thank you.
Okay, within our community among the Blackfoot in southern Alberta, many of our young ladies have been going forward. Maybe they, they're not, their interest was not in the governance, but a lot of them are too. In some of the, like Bikani and Siksika, they've had their women chief. And on the Blood Reserve, we haven't yet, but I'm sure pretty soon we will. And like I said, a lot of our young ladies are women leaders. They've gone out and they've done quite a bit for our reserve, hey, and especially in regards to the governance part. And for those that have gone on to the universities, our doctors, our lawyers, and in the other fields that we have a lot of leadership there. There's a lot of women. So I think a lot of our people, again, going back to how we conduct our societies, how they're conducted, we don't. For the Blackfoot, we always have a woman when there's going to be ceremony, and a woman is never left out. And so, so that's how the Blackfoot also look at their women. They don't push them aside or anything, but they encourage them throughout the, within the societies, if, with their interests and that, they're encouraged to go out and do what they can to bring back whatever can be helpful to the people. Yeah.
I just wanted to add a couple more things on to this last question, and we're talking about leadership. Just to talk a bit about me, I was second woman chief here in Alberta. And it's quite interesting because for me, it's how we role model to our women. And today, my daughter has stepped up to be one of the council members in our reserve. And I know that comes with a lot of challenge, but I do know it could be done. Whereas Laverne said, the women are not pushed back. As a matter of fact, the women are highly respected in a lot of our nations, and they play an important role. They're the advisory for our men in ceremony, in the community, and we play different roles. And even when we talk about the role of an elder, it differs from one nation to the other. So I'm a Ojibwe woman, the only Ojibwe band in Alberta, but I'm also Cree, so I speak both fluent languages. So when we do ceremonies like that, there's a balance between the male and the female, accommodating one another in everything that we do. So it's just being a good role model and being healthy and praising our own people. Because in the work that we just recently did, we're working with Treaty 6, 7, and 8. And we went as far as having an Inuit woman part of the group, which was really interesting because there are some similarities of our teachings and our beliefs and our cultures, but a lot of it has a good understanding of how we respect Mother Earth, how we respect these lands that we're brought up in. So I wanted just to mention that there is a lot of good leadership in the community. As a matter of fact, I just heard there might be more than just 2 chiefs in Alberta, women chiefs. So it's all coming back to taking their role and their responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Theresa. You know, my dad always told me never to be a politician. And I don't always listen to my dad. So I'm just gonna leave that there. No, I'm running in the 2021. Just start making up things on the live. No, I think that, you know, one of the things is that, you know, everybody who was a part of this committee was a leader in my eyes. You know, they each stepped up and came into this and went out there to their own communities and did the research and made those connections and went into ceremony. And so I think that, you know, I really hope that this inspires our young women to continue to do this work. So we have another question here. Could you please provide an online link so that I can share this? So we will be putting it up on the city's YouTube page and on edmonton.ca/Indigenous Ward Names. So you will be able to find that there. The next question. First of all, thank you for the amazing step forward into a meaningful way of life. I think this sets up great precedents for the municipalities to respect our First Nations people and to make a connection to reconciliation. Instead of making this a checklist item for other cities and towns, how can they follow suit to make it happen with the respect and good intentions as their committee has done? And how important is it to the Indigenous communities to make this happen in other municipalities? Does anybody want to? I'll just add a little bit to that. And then if any of our panelists want to also add on, I think that there's always opportunities. There is always opportunities. And I think that, you know, if cities or towns are looking at creating opportunities to do an initiative like this, that this has to come from our Indigenous people. And I try to say that in the most respectful way, but we need to be able to be leading this work, and we need to be able to leading it and having those Indigenous voices at that table. And that's crucial. That's really crucial. I think about, you know, the many different committees out there that may be doing Indigenous work, and at the tables is a very little Indigenous voices. And so I always advocate that, you know, this was definitely Indigenous led, and if other organizations or cities or towns are looking at doing something like this, that it is they're ensuring those Indigenous voices. Do any of our panelists want to add to that, or Rob?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think the key to all of this is, aside from what Terri said, is that having that good working relationship with people, whether it's the town council or the municipalities. And for the town of Rocky Mountain House, we're starting to build that bridge of communication and a good working relationship. And I'm pretty sure this is going to follow up of what we did in the city of Edmonton, is for them to start looking at bridging that culture with the Rocky Mountain House area. But it does require the First Nations around there to have that good working relationship with the town council and the the other municipalities to be able to start looking at renaming or however that's going to look like. And I know we're there already with our small town of Rocky Mountain House. We've got that good working relationship with the town council. So I think that's where it starts, is to start working with those relationships in a good way. And a lot of it has to do with educating, cultural awareness, because a lot of them don't know, right? And what they don't know, they don't know what to ask. And the other thing too, I want to stress also is that I think we as Native people have to forgive the unforgivable. And I mean that in a good way, because a lot of times other people don't understand what our people have gone through in the past. So we have to talk about those histories in order to make amends to ourselves and people around us, right? And so that's why I say it's so important to do that, forgive, even to the people that are not here today, to forgive the unforgivable. So I really like that term, because for me that really goes along with one of the 7 sacred teachings, which is love, and so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll just add that, just continuing on that kind of train of thought, that a lot of the conversations, a lot of the educational aspect of these initiatives and allowing Indigenous people to do that is opening up those conversations around the truth, and the truth that that Canadians, to a large degree, have been robbed of, that they've been sold and force fed this idea that Indigenous people were a bunch of people just roaming the plains without any structure or society. And in fact, we had very complex, very civil, the most civilized societies in the world at the time, and a way of living with each other and with nature. And that is the truth, and that's the facts, and you cannot dispute those. And I think we're at a place now where people are starting to question more and starting to think about it more, and starting to re-examine some of these scholars from the past, like Maslow and others, who their hierarchy of needs are now being examined in connection to Blackfoot culture and the teepee model, and how it's stated that he probably stole those ideas because they weren't known or shared widely at the time, until he regurgitated them as his own kind of ideas. And I think that's all part of this journey of truth. And when you have Indigenous people leading initiatives and doing it in Indigenous ways, we discover more of that truth and uncover more of that truth. And until, I think it was Maurice Sinclair said, you can't have reconciliation until you go through the truth first. And I think we're very much still going through all of that truth phase with a lot of this work. And I'm happy to help out and be part of any kind of initiative that's out there.
Thank you.
I just want to add a small thing. Yeah, in regards to, the towns, if the town has a large population of First Nations people, they need to, take that responsibility to create that space for them. Hear the voices of the First Nations people that live amongst you, and maybe have, invite them to be a part of the festivities in town, like focus on Aboriginal Day, focus on the seasons, the changes of seasons, and celebrate, and bring them in to help you celebrate. That way they're also learning about the importance of the seasons as well. There's so many things that, these towns can do. They could just, put their foot forward and say, yes, we want this, and create this this environment of, rich information and love. I think that would help them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. I am just going to see and scroll here into our other questions. Could you review the pronunciations? So we do actually have some pronunciation videos that we would like to share. So this is probably a good time where we will do that right now.
Nakota Iska. Nakota Iska. The Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation is the most northwestern representative of the Siouan language family.
Anangnak. Anangnak is Inuktun for breath of life or spirit.
Dastawinawak. Dastawinawak. Dastawinawak is the term Nehiawak or Cree people used to refer to the LGBTQ2S plus community. It roughly translates to in-between people.
Dene. Dene. The translation of the word dene in English is people, all people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous.
Odeimen. Odeimen is an Anishinaabe word for strawberry.
Métis. Métis. Métis means a person who self-identifies as Métis and is of historic Métis Nation ancestry.
Sipiwinawak. Sipiwinawak means River Cree.
Papasteo. Papasteo was a highly respected leader of the Papastes Band number 136. His name in English translates to large woodpecker.
Biesewin. Biesewin is Cree for the land of the thunderbirds.
Ibikwukanipiotsi. Ibikwukanipiotsi is Blackfoot and means the northern migration of the bison for calving season.
Garahio. Garahio is Mohawk for tall, beautiful forest.
Spomitapi. Spomitapi means star person in Blackfoot.
Yes, those are some fantastic pronunciation videos, and those are all extended versions are available on the website that Terri mentioned earlier, edmonton.ca/Indigenous Ward Names. There is also on various platforms on YouTube and social media some fantastic ward name featured videos and animations that are coming out that are fantastic in nature and very informative. And they share a lot of information in those videos. So I encourage everyone to continue to tune into those and to retweet and repost and like and share on Facebook and wherever else on all your socials. We have we have lots of questions coming in. I'll go to a more kind of relevant one for today's for this week's events. So it's kind of a two-parter. So how would you characterize the general reaction from the Edmonton public to the new ward names? So I'll touch on that a little bit myself. So it was when we started the process, and as you saw in the documentary, I was very skeptical at the beginning, but because having worked for the city and worked in the city and worked in Alberta for a long time, you know that whenever you mention the word Indigenous or First Nations or Métis or anything like that, um, you're initially going to get people that come out in droves to support, and you're also going to trigger, unfortunately, some of the ill people within our community that take those things in kind of racist terms, and they take action and they troll and whatever else. So I was very much expecting both of those outcomes coming our way. Um, so monitoring things on social media, keeping my ear to the ground in the news stories and whatever else. I was expecting some of the kind of racist vitriol to come, but what I wasn't expecting is kind of how the community and the city has really embraced these names, and it's really taken on a life of its own. And there are people, I think, speaking the ward names and learning about them and sharing them with others, and really embracing them to another level that I didn't really anticipate, and seeing it now in kind of election materials and things like that, and having candidates have it, certain candidates have it on their websites and things like that, and have descriptions and explanations of it on there as well. I think it's been a very welcome and heartwarming kind of aspect to all this work, and it's really opened my eyes to that. There, although you do get the vitriol and the people that just hate on things, you do get people that really, I think, are wanting these kind of shifts and wanting these kinds of sharing opportunities. Do any of the panelists have any thoughts, or Terri, on that kind of first part, and then I'll hop into the second part, which is very time and place for this week.
I think that I'll just add to that. You know, and it's not necessarily I chose to stay off the news feeds, knowing that the racism would come up in those public spaces online, and so I didn't read into them at all, and that was a choice. But I think one of the really cool things is that I was driving with my daughter, who she's 8 now, she was 7. And we were driving home from my community back to Edmonton, and it was a drive, and I was just asking her random questions, and I said, "What does mommy do?" And she responds, and she doesn't know my job title at the university, but she's often a part of the conversations of the work that I'm doing, and she said, "Mommy makes things Cree." And it was so simple, but so meaningful in the way that she understood that, you know, Indigenous initiatives is that and not necessarily just Cree, but in her eyes, you know, my work in this life was to make things Cree. And that speaks a lot to my own journey in this. And I think that, you know, that's just a little story that I wanted to share in regards to kind of the reactions. And that was my little girl's reaction to this project. Is there any other comments from our panelists before we go into the next question, which I'm really excited to get into this next question, and not because it's a very relevant question, but a really important discussion that I think that we need to have. Theresa.
Yes, just a couple of comments on this question. I think one of the things that we have to remember is that we're going to have, I was surprised too, because there was a lot of good supporting comments and stuff, right? So you're going to have people that are supporters, and then you're going to have people that are sitting on the fence, seeing what's happening, you know, and then of course you're going to have the ones that are going to be criticizing, right? So you have three sets of people. So what we need to focus on is knowing that there's healing happening, there's change happening, and we have to keep educating the ones that are sitting on the fence, And when I say educating them is keep talking about the importance of our role here. And I think it's just a great time for us to be able to do the work and to be able to be part of this healing, right? Healing and working together with other peoples. Thanks.
So the second part of the question is, what is the panel's reaction to the racist comments sent to Oilers defenseman and Achapaway's First Nations member Ethan Bear after the Jets eliminated the Oilers, and on a goal that Connor McDavid gave away the puck? I'll make that statement first, but any thoughts from the panel members on what's been happening this week to our brother Ethan Bear?
I was wondering when this was coming up. Ethan Bear is my newsome. Not through blood, but as a grandmother. I've accepted him and embraced him as my grandson. And I cheered him on every game as my newsome. And I watched him play every game. Win or lose, I watched Oilers play. When he was benched, I didn't watch them because I thought, why do all of this when you're, given the privileged players time out on the ice when you could be helping these other players that are benched because they made one mistake? And I think that's so cruel that he would be held responsible for the loss of how many games? 4 games. And it's outrageous. I think a lot of these people need to, get educated. They need to go out there and skate and see how it feels, to be skating, after the puck like that. And I bet a lot of these people who are complaining have never done that. But I think Ethan Bear is very humble and he's very responsible. And he's also he knows the game. He knows the game. So what he did was he made a stand. I don't know if you guys seen that just recently. He made a stand against what was being said, and he wasn't vicious. He wasn't mad. He just simply stated that he loves who he is, and he loves where he comes from. I think it's outrageous. I think Confederacy Treaty 6 also made a statement and said to the NHL, stand up and make your voice heard. Speak on behalf of him. If you speak on behalf of him, you're speaking on behalf of all others of color. And I think that's excellent. So I'm really sad for Ethan Bear. I do not wish. I hope nobody comes through the threat of the death threats that were out there as well. And I know we're resilient people. He's one of them. He's going to be the best player ever in the upcoming seasons. And what are these people going to do? They're going to be cheering for him. Right? Sorry if I was upset.
Do any of our other panelists want to comment? I'll hold mine till later.
I think this is one of the things that I often talk about is that everything is happening as a change, and we're going to start to see more and more of this, but we're going to have people not react, but be proactive. And when I say proactive to racism is education, right? Because hurt people, no matter what race they are. And And our way is just to keep educating and praying for those people that, they'll have a better train of thought of when it comes to making remarks about other races people, so it's educating and praying for those people, is what I say. And and I keep praying for Ethan that things will become better in a situation like that, especially when it comes to sports, because I think we have so many talented people, because a lot of times, even those young people, as good as they are in their hockey, whether it's the younger generation, they get pushed aside, and that's reality. That's reality. We pay the same amount of money for our kids to go to hockey schools or to play throughout the seasons, and at the end of the game, they're good, but they don't make it through. And that's reality. We have to work harder to educate our people of the ignorance of, of them not knowing what they're doing, or know what they're doing, but they're hurting one another. And education, I think, is the key for that. Thank you.
Okay. I just heard about Ethan Bear this morning, and it really, it brought up memories about my son. All these hockey mothers, I believe they've experienced what has been going on with Ethan Bear with their own children. And so my son, when he first experienced it, and it was in the city of Lethbridge. And like I said, he's not the first one. It happens to all First Nation kids in whatever sport they play in. And so, and at the time, they wanted to get him off the ice, and so the coach, I didn't hear it, but my son heard him, and another player heard him. The coach told the captain of that team, if you call him a dirty Indian, he's going to react. Hey? And so the captain did. And so my son reacted. Hey? And so they, and that was their way of getting him off the ice. But rather than just getting him off the ice, it went out, that's full fist fighting and everything. But what really helped my son was the support from the other parents. They were non-natives, and they really stood up for my son. And like Theresa mentioned, we have a lot of resiliency, and so I believe Ethan will get through this, and he'll come out on top in the long run. And again, we just need to keep cheering on our children in whatever sport they're playing in, because it's happened to me too, and I'm sure it happened to you guys too, going to school, and like I said, in whatever sport, natives always get pushed aside, no matter how good they are. Again.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a good point too, as well, as that, we as Indigenous people all of us have experienced racism sometimes in our daily lives, depending where we are. And so I know that, Ethan, if you are watching, or if any of Ethan's family is watching, you have a bunch of cookums who have your back. You have a bunch of cookums and women who have your back. I've been putting on my social media that I want to interview Ethan Bear on Two Crees in a Pod. And again, to have these conversations. Again, he inspires many of our youth and our young people, and just playing with the Oilers, again, is such an inspiration. And I think that, you know, unfortunately, when this happens, it's hurtful. And it doesn't just hurt Ethan and his family in such a deep way. It hurts all of us. We all feel it. We all feel it in Indian country, across this country, because we know what that feels like, and it's hurtful. And I think that, you know, again, as some of you had mentioned, you know, keeping him and his family in your prayers is one of the most powerful things that we can do for him. But yeah, Ethan, just so you know, you have a bunch of cookums who have your back. Rob, do you want to add anything to that question?
I think that's very good points, that it's not only hurtful to him, but it hurts a lot of us, because we've, like Laverne said, we've gone through that with our kids, with our brothers. I remember going to some of these small Alberta towns with my brother when he played hockey, and you get those comments, and you get, and the sad thing is that it's not the kids doing it, it's the parents encouraging the kids to pull his hair, or to call him a name, and to do whatever. And I think that's what, I think it hurts us all, because Indian country, word travels fast, and because we've all had these experiences, it makes us even more angry and hurt. But I think through prayer and through understanding and through support, we can help each other through this. And I echo what Lillian said. I think he is one of the best defensemen out there, and he's going to continue to be a leader in this league until someone forces him out, which usually happens to some of our best people. And looking at people like Jonathan Chichu and others who were leading the league in goal scoring, and then all of a sudden disappeared because the system didn't like that. So lots of great learnings, lots of great conversation tonight. I thank everyone for their time, and I'll pitch it back to you, Terri.
Thank you. So I just want to, again, express my gratitude to you, Laverne, and for starting us in that good way. And to thank you to Lillian as well, and to Theresa for joining us today. And of course, to all our committee members, women who are supported us, because again, there was a number of us that did this work last summer. And so in closing, I would like to invite Theresa to close us with a prayer today.
Thank you. This has been a humbling experience. So I'd like to just say, my name is Pascal Mostoskawi Tapmat. I'm going to close in my language, Cree. But first of all, I'd like to just acknowledge my ancestors. I come from, my father's a Bird Clan and my mother's a Bear Clan, and acknowledge the ancestors in that way. So with that, join me in a prayer in the best way you know how. Ha mamo tai dan ha sai mina kit misna naskom na noskap misgiska. Kapes naske na mo ya kan mami hon ha mi te hin papo ksewatsun. Ami nakakyon jawsum snanik nosum nanik dan stapan nanik. If takakyo get mi suhngea. Ami nakaktimak sa taisino. Egonik mina miskagis mustamog. We start up music skate the master chick that they got bait squib chin chick got me stay bota chick sevanto that means me up mohte chick on magami was sick mexicano. If son let me ate and got you get me shooting gay. Hi, no, thank you.